Hi everyone, welcome to RoadScholars. It's a beautiful sunny day here in North Carolina. And when I think of Porsche beauty, it's hard not to think about 959s. Maybe arguably the most beautiful Porsche built to date. Very fortunate to have and be able to share two significant 959s. Every 959 is significant. They're all special. Thank you to Mr. Ingram and the Ingram Collection for letting me get out his 959 Sport. And this is a 959 Komfort that we've had in inventory and recently sold, going to a great home, someone that is very excited to be its next caretaker and continue on preserving this 3,000-mile Komfort version 959. Also significant, most of its life, it was owned by Paul Allen of Microsoft. And this is the 959, the chassis that Paul Allen and Bill Gates helped, basically working with through Congress, to create the show and display status of importing cars into the United States legally when they were older than 25 years. So very significant car, super killer, yes, 3,000 miles, maybe because it was on show and display status, but with the blue interior kind of as the accent, just so special, and I'm happy for the new owner, a killer example. Before we get into the nitty-gritty and talk about maybe some similarities and differences between a Komfort and Sport version 959, we've got to go back to the beginning. We got to go back to 1981, 1982, and kind of how they came to fruition. What's the idea? What was the thought process of creating a 959? So in 81, newly the managing director was Peter Schultz. And Peter Schultz at the time was fortunate enough to have Helmut Bott as his chief engineering executive. Helmut Bott started with Porsche in, I believe, 1952. So through the decades, Helmut Bott was able to experience, guys like Ferdinand Piëch and Norbert Singer and motorsports, and recognize the importance of motorsports and homologation and evolving them into production cars and carrying it forward. But a lot of the basis was to go racing. And the 959 really coming to fruition, Bott going to Schutz, saying, let's create this car. What better way to kind of experiment with some of these ideas I have than to create a rally car, right? And to go to Group B racing and Group B rally racing. So that's kind of the beginning of it. And Schutz said, run with it, do your thing, create a car. And that's exactly what they did. So in 1983, the rally car debuted in Paris, a lot of great success. And in 1985, Porsche debuted the production street-going version of the 959. Then they had a few complications, had to fix some bugs perhaps, and the first production models were released and sold to public in 1986, designated 1987, 1988 year models. Total cost of a 959 new was about $225,000. You think about value today, and yeah, very much different. Essentially, 225 grand was about half as much as what it cost Porsche to make a 959. So it wasn't a very fruitful thing, but what was so great about it, and I think Bott knew this, is that they're going to use all this special new technology way ahead of its time, very advanced, that they're going to be able to draw from this technology moving forward over a period of time into the 90s, 2000s, and even still today. Porsche is using some of the technologies from a 959. Total production, 292 production cars. To go Group B racing, they had to make 200 homologation cars. So 292 cars. Of those 292, only 29 sport models. So a little bit more rare. But at the end of the day, they didn't make that many in total. So very rare, as we all know, the 959s. 37 prototypes. And then what many people don't know, or we all forget about sometimes until we miraculously see one, is that in 1992-93, Porsche utilized some of the leftover parts from the 80s, and they made 8 more 959s, which cranked out a little bit more power. There was 4 red ones, and there was 4 silver ones in 92 and 93. So let's dig into a little bit about what makes the Komfort models and the sport variants. What are some similarities? What are some differences? What makes a 959 so special, so beautiful, and so ahead of its time? And we got to really start with the body and the design of the chassis and the construction of the shell, so to speak. So Mr. Bott utilized everything you could think of. The body and chassis are made up of aluminum and Kevlar. Kevlar essentially the predecessor to carbon fiber, right? A very super lightweight plastic material. And instead of using steel for the floor pans, they opted to use Nomex, which is another plastic material. So saving a ton of weight that way. The Komfort models weigh in about 3,200 pounds versus a sport model, saving a little bit more weight in other ways, which we're going to get into. The sport model coming in about a little under 3,000 pounds, so about 200 pounds lighter in the sport version versus the Komfort version. What else makes them special? Some other similarities. The all-wheel drive suspension, right? A lot of us know about that. We've heard about that. The technology that Porsche drew upon and used into the 911 Carrera 4, in the 964s. Obviously, we still have Carrera 4s. So the first all-wheel drive suspension. A lot of people understand and have heard about the hydraulic lift suspension on the Komfort variants, which this Komfort right now is set at the highest level. So it's three different adjustments at a low, medium, and high. This is the highest, and about to travel from the lowest setting on the suspension is about 5 inches to where it's sitting now. So you can see the difference, obviously, in the wheel well of kind of where the cars are sitting, what stance they are positioned at. Looking at the wheels, magnesium, and they're hollow. And this allowed Porsche to utilize tire pressure monitoring system, the TPS sensors, right? That we know in all new cars today, but for Porsche it was a first, and a technology, again, they drew from that and utilized it moving forward into other production cars that we've become to know and love. So another similarity is what's under the engine deck lid, right? Both engines in a Sport and Komfort, 2.8 liter, flat 6, twin turbocharged, that is sequential. That's very important because what Porsche was able to get out of the sequential system, right, a turbo for each bank, and we think of the first turbos, the 930s, in the 75 until the 959s, and we think of that turbo leg, right? You don't get that kick, you feel that turbo kick in, and then all of a sudden, whoa, it takes off, right? In the sequential system, and I was fortunate enough to drive, when we got this car in inventory, I drove it a little bit, and just a reminder that through the whole speed band, and I'm doing 3 or 4 tenths, right, not pushing the car at all, and but the whole power band, you don't feel that turbo leg, right? So that sequential twin turbo system, you get that nice smooth transition of power, which you didn't have in the 930 per se. Both cars are married to a 6-speed manual transmission. What's so cool about it, and you can see that on the shift knob is the letter G. So it's up and to the left. The letter G stood for the German word Gelände, which translates to terrain, which is an homage. These cars were built to go rally racing. So it's a lower gear that you don't really use for street use, but it is kind of this low gear that was meant for off-road use, and obviously when guys were rallying these cars around the world. So that's really, really cool. It's one of my favorite things about the 959s. Some of the differences. Let's get into the nitty-gritty. Mainly, what is the difference between the more produced Comforts and the 29 Sport variants? So yes, the motors are the same, 2.8 liter, twin turbocharged, but they used a little bit bigger turbo in the 959 Sport, which allowed it about 50 more horsepower. The Comforts produce about 450 horsepower, and the 959 Sport's a little over 500 horsepower. So you think about today's standards, 50 horsepower, maybe not a lot, but certainly back in the 80s, significant, especially when you think about other weight reduction that they used in the Sport, about 200 pounds lighter. And so that extra kick in the pants, you can feel, and a little bit, they move a little bit more quickly, so to speak, down the road. Some other main difference, you look into the cockpit, the way they saved some weight, no back seats in a Sport, no air conditioning, no radio, and you look at the seats, it's a special seat that is covered in cloth, a very famous, one of the best seats that Porsche ever used, in my opinion, the tri-toned gray cloth instead of the leather that they used in the Comfort versions, along with the harness system, the racing harness, the Autoflug harness is really cool, and the Sport models received leather-wrapped, partially leather-wrapped roll cage from the factory. And probably the biggest way they were able to save nearly 200 pounds is that suspension. So we touched upon the elevation of the hydraulic lift suspension, but the Sport models are on coilovers. So they are at a fixed stance, and that probably saves the majority of that weight reduction versus the Comfort models. So there you have it, a few talking points. My abbreviated version, moving rapidly through kind of a historical look, how the 959 came to fruition, a few similarities, a few differences, similarities of the body and the construction and the composites of what they're made of, and the differences between, you know, obviously the suspension, slight motor differences, interior differences, weight differences between a 959 Comfort and a 959 Sport. I really want to get in and go for a drive and rip around, but I don't think I'm going to take that opportunity, but I do thank the Ingram Collection letting me get out the Sport model. I'm, like I said in the beginning, very excited for the new owner of this very significant, special 959 Comfort variant. And again, what an opportunity to be able to share here at RoadScholars. We don't always have 959s laying around, let alone essentially two white 959s. To me, the purest. I love them in white. I love them all, right? Red, silver, black. But very, very cool to look at two cars that look very much the same, but yet are slightly different. So it's been fun. If you have any questions, call us anytime. We look forward to next time. Thanks.